The soft early morning sunlight streamed into the kitchen of the white colonial-style house. It was a crisp early September morning, typical of New England. In front of the two-car garage, maple trees just beginning to show their fall colors sparkled in the morning light. "Mom, can you help me with my art homework today?" I turned around at 6-year-old Kevin's voice while preparing breakfast at the counter, wearing an apron over my Navy theory suit. He was already dressed in his uniform with his backpack on. The pearl necklace around my neck glowed softly in the morning sun. "Of course, sweetie. We'll do it after dinner. I'm making pot roast tonight." I gently stroked Kevin's black hair as I answered. He flashed a satisfied smile. My son could draw with remarkable detail for a first grader, and I was so proud of him. "Mom, I got 100% on my math test." 10-year-old Tommy burst into the kitchen, proudly holding up his test paper. My heart swelled with pride seeing my son maintain top grades in his 5th grade class. "That's wonderful. Let's put it on the fridge." "Did you show Dad?" "Yes." Dad was really happy. "I want to be an architect like him when I grow up." Just then, 8-year-old Luke came racing down the stairs with his soccer uniform in hand. He was already making a name for himself as a star player on the school team. "Mom, I have soccer practice after school today. Can you drive me? Coach says he's going to teach us new strategies." "Of course, honey. I'll pick you up at 3. My meeting with the Boston luxury real estate client should be done by 2. I answered while plating scrambled eggs and pancakes. The sweet aroma of maple syrup wafted through the kitchen. As the children sat down at the table, my husband Michael appeared in his gray suit. The few strands of gray mixed in with his black hair only added to his charm. "Good morning, everyone." He kissed me and accepted his coffee. As president of Wilson Architecture, he always kept a busy schedule. "I have a meeting about a new project today. It's a $30 million deal. Good luck, dear. Dinner's at 7. The kids are looking forward to it." I handed out lunch boxes packed with homemade sandwiches to each child as I saw my husband off. Tommy carefully tucked away his math workbook, Luke his soccer cleats, and Kevin his half-finished drawing. This peaceful morning scene would have been unimaginable 10 years ago. I remembered that day when I had a bitter falling out with my sister Patricia over our mother's inheritance. Dressed in luxury brands and successful as a senior VP at an investment bank, she had looked down at me and declared, "I have a valuable life. I make $500,000 a year. You don't deserve any of this. I'll inherit this house too. You couldn't handle it anyway, could you?" We hadn't spoken since then. She inherited most of our mother's estate and completely cut ties with me. She blocked me on social media and avoided any mutual acquaintances. After that, I built my career as a real estate agent and worked my way up to earning $120,000 a year. Then 3 years ago, I met and married Michael, who had 3 children with his late wife Mary, who had passed away from leukemia. Though we're not related by blood, I love those children with all my heart. My smartphone's notification sound interrupted my reminiscing. Looking at the screen, I saw a message from an unexpected sender. "Sister, we need to talk about something important. Let's meet. I've made reservations." Tomorrow at 7 p.m. at Le Soir in Back Bay. The sender was listed as Patricia Thompson. This contact from my sister after 10 years filled me with an ominous feeling. Especially her presumptuous tone in, "I've made reservations," showed her unchanged arrogance. Le Soir in the Back Bay district is one of Boston's finest French restaurants. Baccarat crystal chandeliers cast soft light inside the 19th-century brownstone building facing Newbury Street. Debussy's Clair de Lune played quietly from a Steinway grand piano throughout the elegant space. When I stepped out of my Uber Black in my Navy Theory suit, Patricia was already waiting at the bar counter. She was wearing a deep red Dior dress with a Cartier diamond necklace gleaming at her throat. Her Louboutin heels emphasized her haughty attitude even more. "Oh my, is that suit really appropriate? And isn't that bag looking a bit worn?" Her very first words revealed the same arrogance, unchanged after 10 years. I silently followed the maitre d' to our windowside special table. This restaurant has a 3-month waiting list, you know. But for wealthy clients like me, it's different. Isn't the view of Boston calm and beautiful from here? The sommelier respectfully presented the wine list. Patricia ordered Dom Perignon without even glancing at the prices. I was right to invest mother's inheritance. It grew more than tenfold with Tesla stock and Bitcoin. My portfolio is worth over $15 million now. She bragged while sipping her glass. The champagne bubbles sparkled gold in the chandelier light. I built a mansion in Beacon Hill. With a pool, of course. I have 2 maids too. You couldn't manage that, could you, sister? Newton is a bit too suburban, isn't it? I silently drank my champagne. On the starch white tablecloth, mother's heirloom Mikimoto pearl necklace glowed quietly. "By the way, I heard about your family. You married a divorced man with children? To think that a Wall Street investment bank VP would have a sister who married such a man." At those words, I finally looked straight into her eyes. Her deep green eyes had lost their former warmth. "Yes, I have 3 wonderful children. They're all very smart and caring." "Well, isn't it hard raising someone else's children? The education costs must be outrageous. Harvard tuition is over $75,000 a year now. For 3 children? Can you do the math?" As the appetizers arrived with French service, my sister's words grew increasingly sharp. In contrast to the delicate taste of the white asparagus mousse, the conversation took on an increasingly hostile tone. The following Tuesday, my sister suddenly visited our house. The children were at school, and I was home alone. Stepping out of her Porsche Cayenne, she scrutinized the house's exterior as if conducting a real estate appraisal. "Nice house. In this area, it must be worth at least $3 million? 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2-car garage. Colonial style, 15 years old. As a real estate agent, you must know the market value, right?" She surveyed our open-concept living room with appraising eyes. Her gaze stopped on the family photos above the fireplace. "The children's education must be expensive? I could make much smarter investments. Why not sell this house and move to a more affordable area? Dorchester has cheap rent, you know." That afternoon at 3 p.m., she also appeared at my workplace, Boston Luxury Real Estate. In our office on the 35th floor of the Prudential Tower, she raised her voice in front of staff during a client meeting. "I'll take away all of Sister's happy life. You don't deserve this lifestyle." Her words carried an icy chill unsuited to September in Boston. Through the high-rise windows, I could see the fall foliage spreading along the Charles River. As my staff looked on in confusion, I quietly left the office. Driving home in my BMW, I wondered, why had my sister broken her 10-year silence? Why was she so obsessed? Since the inheritance dispute, she had completely cut ties with me. She had blocked me on social media and avoided any mutual acquaintances. Then recently, she must have somehow found my Instagram account and seen the happy photos with my family. Posts about Thanksgiving preparations, PTA meetings, charity events. They were tagged with #blessed, #family-love, #stepmom-love. Parking in the garage and heading to the front door, I could see Tommy, Luke, and Kevin doing their homework through the window. Tommy working on math problems, Luke planning strategies for his soccer game, Kevin painting at his easel. This peaceful everyday scene, my sister must be plotting something against it. I sighed deeply, thinking about our second dinner scheduled for tomorrow night. The private room at La Bella Vita was an elegant space decorated with hand-carved wooden panels imported from 16th century Florence. An antique chandelier made in Murano, Italy cast soft light, and Persian carpets covering the floor absorbed all sound. Through the windows, you could see Back Bay's sophisticated cityscape, with Boston Commons autumn trees glowing in the sunset. My sister Patricia arrived again in flashy attire. Waiter. Champagne. 2 bottles of 2008 Dom Perignon. Ice from Antarctic glaciers. And Baccarat Allegria collection glasses. As soon as she entered, she commanded the staff with theatrical gestures and an intimidating attitude, like a Broadway actress. Her $1,500 Christian Louboutin heels rang loudly against the Italian marble floor. Oh my, those pearls look rather cheap. Real celebrities were Van Cleef and Arpels. I sat down silently. The table was set with the finest damask tablecloth flown in from Paris, lined with Baccarat wine glasses. Classical music played quietly from speakers mounted on the walls. You can't normally get reservations for this private room. The room charge is waived for VIPs like me. Your annual salary is about what I make in a week. Oh yes, I enjoyed dinner on Martha's Vineyard last week. As champagne was poured and select caviar was served, my sister gave me a contemptuous look. She took a small spoonful while smiling meaningfully. By the way, your husband is the president of Wilson Architecture, right? He's quite a catch. $350,000 annual income, handsome, and cultured. I met him at the Four Seasons bar last week. We discussed architectural designs for my investment projects. My spine froze. My wedding ring caught a faint glimmer from the chandelier. Why did my sister know so much about Michael? And why had she met with my husband in secret? Actually, I have an important confession. My sister dabbed her mouth with her scarf, taking a dramatic pause. I'm pregnant with your husband's child. At this sudden revelation, my hand stopped. My fork touched the expensive porcelain caviar plate with a slight clink. Mozart's The Magic Flute, playing in the private room, seemed to fade into the distance, as if time had stopped. So get out of that house. I'll start a new family with Michael. I'm much more suitable than you. I have $15 million in assets. Children's education costs are like breakfast money to me. My sister's voice grew increasingly loud, threatening to spill out of the private room. The chandelier's luxurious light highlighted the madness in her eyes. However, I maintained my composure. Then you'll take care of the 3 children too. Tommy, Luke, and Kevin. You'll take over all their education loan payments. My sister's expression froze instantly. Her face turned pale. What? Take the children with you. I only want your husband. Raising children isn't part of my life plan. I smiled as I answered. The pearl necklace inherited from our mother glowed quietly at my neck. That's impossible. Because those children. I'll call the police. I'll say you're holding the children hostage. Besides, I have the best lawyers. My sister completely lost her composure and threw her wine glass to the floor. The sound of shattering crystal echoed through the private room. Deep red wine seeped into the expensive Persian carpet. Just then, there was a knock at the door. "Ma'am," we heard raised voices. At the concerned manager's voice, my sister raised her voice even more. Her expensive makeup was beginning to run with her tears. "Call the police. This woman, she's trying to steal my happiness." I slowly took out my mobile phone. The screen already showed the police emergency call page. Do you really want to call the police? Or would you rather tell the truth? The choice is yours. At my calm voice, my sister flinched for a moment. However, she quickly regained her haughty attitude. Her Botox-frozen expression twisted unnaturally. The truth? It's true that I'm pregnant. I have a doctor's certificate. At that moment, the restaurant door opened, and 2 police officers entered with my husband Michael. "Ms. Patricia Thompson? I'm Detective Johnson, and this is Detective Brown." One of the officers displaying a silver badge addressed my sister. The other surveyed the room, assessing the situation. "This woman is holding children hostage. She's trying to take everything from me." My sister screamed in a half-crazed state. "Patricia." Michael's voice was quiet but carried strong determination. He took out his latest iPhone 15 Pro Max, unlocked the security, and began to swipe through it. His graying black hair stood out against the night view backdrop. I recorded all our conversations. The meeting at the Four Seasons bar, and everything after. "What? That's illegal. My lawyer will." My sister's voice trembled. "Recording is legal in Massachusetts with one party's consent," Detective Brown calmly pointed out. "Including our conversation at the Four Seasons last week. I was suspicious from the moment you approached me under the pretense of discussing a project. Especially when you tried to probe for confidential information about my wife's company." Michael showed the officers a photograph. It showed a young woman lying in a hospital bed. It was his former wife, Mary. Even though she was thin from terminal leukemia, her gentle smile was angelic. Her strength in raising 3 children while working at an insurance company showed through in the photo. "This is my beloved late wife, Mary. Just before she died of leukemia, she was worried about our children's future. Give the children a loving mother, that was her final wish. Next, he took out a family album from an expensive leather case. Each photo contained precious memories. And these are photos from our wedding. The ceremony was at St. Paul's Cathedral. Jennifer has fulfilled Mary's wishes by raising our 3 children as her own. Daily homework, PTA meetings, charity events. She has become the perfect mother. He also presented an obituary from the local Boston Globe. The date was 8 years ago. The headline, "Lost a beloved wife, devoted mother, and sincere insurance advisor," conveyed the sadness of that time. So your pregnancy claim appears to be false and potentially constitutes defamation. My sister's haughty expression crumbled like a sandcastle. Her scarf slipped from her trembling hands onto the Persian carpet. I wanted to take everything, this happiness, from my sister. My sister collapsed into her chair. She had completely lost the dignity of her former position as investment bank VP. I couldn't stand that my sister was happy. 10 years ago, I inherited most of our mother's estate. $5 million. But even that wasn't enough. Because my sister seemed happier than me. The forged clinic certificate lay crumpled on the table, bearing the signature of a non-existent doctor. When I found the happy family photos on my sister's Instagram, I felt like my whole life had been wrong. Just then, the private room door opened again. Breaking the high-end restaurant's silence came bouncing voices. "Mom!" The 3 children burst in. Our trusted neighbor babysitter, Mrs. Johnson, followed behind in her Chanel tweed jacket, looking worried. "Tommy, Luke, Kevin. Why?" "Dad called us. He said Mom was in trouble." Tommy answered. His eyes shone proudly. "Jenny is our mom. We don't need another mom. Mom has never missed any of my soccer games." Luke grabbed my hand with the strength he'd built playing soccer, preparing for next week's district tournament. "I love you, Mom. I want to show you the picture I drew today." Kevin hugged me. In those small arms, I felt unconditional love as big as his artistic talent. My sister stared at the scene in a daze. Neither her Cartier jewelry nor her Dior dress held any meaning now. All she saw reflected in her eyes was genuine happiness she could never obtain. Outside the window, the Charles River's surface sparkled in the full moon's light. On Christmas Eve night, our house in Newton glowed with warm light. Logs crackled pleasantly in the fireplace, and ornaments decorated by the children sparkled on the 8-foot Christmas tree. "Mom, are the cookies ready?" Turning at Kevin's voice, I saw him still wearing his apron, paintbrush in hand. On his easel, a family portrait was nearly complete. "In about 10 minutes, sweetheart. Can you finish your drawing by then?" The scent of vanilla and cinnamon wafted from the oven. On the table sat Luke's handmade Christmas card and Tommy's Lego model of the Wilson Architecture office. "Look, it's starting to snow." Michael looked up from the sofa by the fireplace. Outside the window, light snow had begun to fall quietly. Meanwhile, in an old apartment in Dorchester, my sister Patricia was spending Christmas alone in a room that showed no trace of her former luxurious lifestyle. How did it come to this? She took a sip of cheap wine. On the TV screen was news footage reporting her dismissal from the investment bank. Immediate termination due to ethical violations for online defamation. She had lost her Beacon Hill mansion too. Her job search had been unsuccessful. Her prestigious university degree and 20 years of career experience were worthless now due to the social media scandal. She had pawned her luxury brand items and her savings were nearly depleted. "I'm not wrong, it's my sister's fault." But these words lacked their former conviction. The view from her window showed a deteriorating neighborhood. The people she once looked down on were now her neighbors. At our house, we were getting ready to take family photos in front of the fireplace. Everyone smiled. After setting the self-timer, I joined the family circle. Tommy held his Math Olympics gold medal, Luke his soccer championship trophy, and Kevin's award-winning painting was displayed beside him. "Merry Christmas." As the shutter clicked, the children's smiles burst forth. The scene was just like a Norman Rockwell painting. "Mom, can we open presents?" The children rushed to the tree. I leaned against Michael as we watched them. True happiness can't be bought with money, can it? My husband held my shoulder. Outside, snow was beginning to accumulate, wrapping the street trees in a silver world. At the same time, in her Dorchester apartment, Patricia sat alone with her smartphone open. #WilsonFamily #Merry Christmas. She stared for a long time at the family photo my sister had posted. Luxurious Christmas decorations, homemade treats, and above all, the happy family smiles. Swallowing her words, she turned off her smartphone. In the room, only a microwave-heated dinner for one sat lonely. Outside, the snow continued to fall, quietly enveloping the contrast between the two places. Happy family laughter echoed through the Newton house, while lonely silence filled the Dorchester apartment. 3 months after everything ended. That winter in Boston, two lives had begun walking their separate paths.
I never expected to find myself in this mess. One minute I was living the American dream, successful career, handsome husband, and a life that seemed picture perfect. Now I'm sitting in my parents' guest room, wondering where it all went wrong. My name is Emily, and this is how my fairy tale turned into a nightmare. It all started 5 years ago at a friend's barbecue. I was 30, focused on my marketing career, and not looking for love. Then Ethan walked in. "Emily, have you met Ethan?" My friend Sarah's voice cut through the chatter. "He's the architect who designed that new art museum downtown." I turned and found myself face to face with the most captivating man I'd ever seen. Tall, with piercing blue eyes and a smile that could melt ice, Ethan extended his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Emily," he said, his voice smooth as silk. I fumbled with my drink, nearly spilling it. "Oh, nice to meet you too." We talked for hours that night. Ethan was charming, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. I couldn't believe someone like him would give me a second glance. "You're different from the other women I've met," he told me as the party wound down. "Would you like to have dinner sometime?" I said yes, of course. Who wouldn't? Our whirlwind romance was the stuff of movies. Fancy restaurants, weekend getaways, and surprise gifts became the norm. My friends were green with envy. "Girl, you hit the jackpot," my coworker Jen gushed over lunch. "Ethan's like a real-life Prince Charming." I blushed, still not quite believing it myself. "I know, I'm so lucky." 6 months after we met, Ethan proposed. It was a crisp autumn evening in Central Park. He got down on one knee, pulled out a ring that probably cost more than my car, and asked me to be his wife. "Emily, you're the missing piece in my life," he said, his eyes shining. "Will you marry me?" I was so overwhelmed. I could barely squeak out a yes. Our wedding was small, but elegant. Ethan insisted on handling all the details, saying he wanted to make it perfect for me. As I walked down the aisle, I felt like I was floating on air. "You look stunning," Ethan whispered as I reached him at the altar. The reception was a blur of champagne toasts and well wishes. I caught snippets of conversation from the guests. How did plain Jane Emily land a catch like Ethan? She must have some hidden talents, if you know what I mean. I tried to ignore the whispers, focusing instead on my new husband's adoring gaze. As we settled into married life, I threw myself into being the perfect wife. I wanted to prove to everyone, including myself, that I deserved Ethan. But cracks started to appear in our fairy tale facade. It began with little things: a raised eyebrow at the state of the laundry, a sigh when dinner wasn't ready on time. "Emily, darling," Ethan said one evening, his tone deceptively light, "don't you think it's time you focused more on our home? Your career seems to be distracting you." I froze, spatula in hand. "What do you mean?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm just saying, a wife's place is in the home. Don't you want to make me happy?" As I stood there, sauce bubbling on the stove, I felt a chill run down my spine. Something in Ethan's voice made me wonder if I'd made a terrible mistake. Little did I know, that moment was just the beginning of my descent into hell. Meeting Ethan's family was like stepping into another world. A world of polished marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and judgmental stares. I'll never forget that first dinner at their mansion. "Emily, dear, do come in," Sylvia, Ethan's mother, greeted me with air kisses. Her perfume was overpowering, her smile razor-sharp. "I hope you didn't have trouble finding us." I clutched my handbag, suddenly aware of its worn edges. "No, not at all. Your home is beautiful." Ian, Ethan's father, merely grunted from behind his newspaper. Ethan's sister, Kathy, bounded down the stairs, all smiles and designer clothes. "Emily, I'm so glad to finally meet you," she exclaimed, hugging me tightly. "Ethan's told us so much about you." Dinner was a minefield of potential faux pas. I watched Sylvia's eyes narrow as I reached for the wrong fork, heard her tsk when I accidentally clinked my water glass. "So, Emily," Sylvia began, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "Ethan tells us you work in advertising, was it?" "Marketing, actually," I corrected gently. "I'm an executive at—" "Oh, how quaint," she interrupted. "I always admire women who choose to work, though I'm sure you'll want to focus on family soon enough." I felt my cheeks burn. "Well, Mother," Ethan cut in smoothly, "Emily's quite successful in her field. I'm very proud of her accomplishments." Sylvia's lips tightened, but she said nothing more. As weeks passed, the pressure to fit into Ethan's world grew. Sylvia's helpful suggestions became a constant barrage. "Emily, darling, you simply must let me introduce you to my stylist," she'd say, eyeing my off-the-rack dress. Or, "I've enrolled you in my favorite cooking class. Every wife should know how to prepare a proper soufflé." I tried to take it in stride, but each comment chipped away at my confidence. Kathy, surprisingly, became my ally. "Don't let Mom get to you," she whispered one day as we helped clear the table. "She's just set in her ways." I smiled gratefully. "Thanks, Kathy. I'm trying, but sometimes I feel like I'll never measure up." She squeezed my arm. "Just be yourself. That's who Ethan fell in love with, right?" But even as Kathy reassured me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was constantly being evaluated, found wanting. Things came to a head at Sylvia's annual charity gala. I'd spent weeks preparing, determined to make a good impression, but as I descended the grand staircase, I heard the whispers. "Is that Ethan's wife? In that dress?" "She looks so common." I froze, my confidence evaporating. Ethan appeared at my side, his smile tight. "Everything all right, dear?" he murmured. I nodded, not trusting my voice. As we made our rounds, I felt Sylvia's disapproving gaze following me. Later, as I fumbled through small talk with Ethan's business associates, I overheard Sylvia speaking to a friend. "Yes, Emily's nice enough, but between you and me, I had hoped Ethan would choose someone more suitable for our circle." My heart sank. I excused myself and fled to the powder room, fighting back tears. As I stared at my reflection, I wondered if I'd ever belong in this world. A soft knock startled me. "Emily?" It was Kathy. "Are you okay?" I opened the door, my carefully applied makeup smeared. Kathy's eyes widened. "Oh, honey," she sighed, pulling me into a hug. "Don't let them get to you. They're all snobs anyway." I pulled back, wiping my eyes. "How do you stand it?" Kathy's smile turned bitter. "Years of practice. But listen, Emily, you don't have to change who you are for them. For anyone." As we rejoined the party, Ethan caught my eye from across the room. His brow furrowed in concern, but he made no move to come to me. In that moment, surrounded by glittering wealth and barely concealed disdain, I realized I was utterly alone in this new life I'd chosen. And for the first time, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. The alarm blared at 5 a.m., jolting me awake. Another day of juggling work and home life stretched before me. I tiptoed out of bed, careful not to wake Ethan, and headed to the kitchen. By 6:30, I'd prepared Ethan's favorite breakfast, ironed his shirts, and was reviewing notes for my big presentation. As I sipped my coffee, Ethan sauntered in, frowning at the table. "No fresh squeezed orange juice?" he asked, his tone sharp. I froze. "I'm sorry, I forgot. I'll run to the store." "Never mind," he cut me off. "I'll grab something at the office." As he left, I felt a familiar knot in my stomach. When had I become so afraid of disappointing him? At work, I threw myself into my presentation, pushing aside my morning's troubles. Just as I was wrapping up, my phone buzzed. "Ethan. Emily, we need to talk. Come home early." My heart raced as I drove home, imagining worst-case scenarios. Had I forgotten an important event? Was Ethan sick? I found him in the living room, pacing. "Sit down," he said, his voice unnervingly calm. "What's wrong?" I asked, perching on the edge of the sofa. Ethan took a deep breath. "I think it's time you quit your job." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What? But why?" "Our home life is suffering, Emily. The house is a mess. Meals are rushed. And frankly, I'm tired of eating takeout when my wife should be cooking." I stared at him, stunned. "But my career, I've worked so hard. Don't you think our marriage is more important?" Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Or are you saying you care more about your job than me?" "No, of course not," I stammered. "But can't we find a balance? Maybe hire some help?" Ethan scoffed. "And admit we can't manage our own home? What would people think?" As we argued, I felt my dreams slipping away. Finally, exhausted, I agreed to think about it. The next few weeks were a blur of increased household responsibilities and mounting pressure at work. I'd wake at 4 a.m. to clean, cook elaborate meals, and still try to meet my deadlines. One evening, as I rushed to prepare dinner after a long day, disaster struck. The roast burned, filling the kitchen with smoke. Ethan stormed in, waving his arms. "What's going on? Can't you do anything right?" Tears stung my eyes as I tried to salvage the meal. "I'm sorry, I got caught up with work and... Work again?" Ethan's voice dripped with disdain. "If you can't handle both, maybe it's time to make a choice." I turned to face him, anger finally bubbling up. "You knew who I was when you married me, Ethan. My career is part of who I am." His expression hardened. "Well, maybe I thought you'd grow up and realize what's truly important." As we glared at each other, the doorbell rang. Ethan's parents. "What's that smell?" Sylvia asked as she swept in, wrinkling her nose. I wanted to sink into the floor. There was an accident with dinner." Sylvia clicked her tongue. "Oh, Emily, how do you expect to be a proper wife if you can't even manage a simple meal?" I looked to Ethan, hoping he'd defend me. But he just shook his head, disappointment clear in his eyes. That night, lying awake, I replayed every criticism, every disapproving look. When had I become this shadow of myself, constantly seeking approval? My phone lit up with a text from my boss. "Great job on the Henderson account. You're on track for that promotion." In that moment, something inside me snapped. I couldn't keep living like this, torn between two worlds, never good enough for either. As dawn broke, I made a decision. I wouldn't quit my job, but I knew this choice would come at a cost. The question was I ready to pay it? I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back at me. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, and my once vibrant smile had faded to a weary line. This was the cost of trying to be everything to everyone. "Emily," Ethan's voice boomed from downstairs, "where's my blue tie? I have an important meeting." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and plastered on a smile. "Coming, dear." As I helped Ethan with his tie, he frowned at me. "You look tired. Are you still working on that project? I thought we agreed you'd cut back your hours." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just didn't sleep well." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Make sure you're home early today. My parents are coming for dinner." My stomach dropped. "But I have a presentation." "Figure it out," he snapped. "Family comes first, remember?" After he left, I collapsed onto the couch, my mind racing. How could I possibly manage everything? As I scrolled through my phone, a text from my boss popped up. Emily, don't forget, big presentation today. This could lead to that promotion we discussed. Tears pricked my eyes. I'd worked so hard for this opportunity, but Ethan's demands echoed in my head. With shaking hands, I dialed my boss's number. Janet? I'm so sorry, but I can't make the presentation today. Family emergency. The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Janet spoke, her disappointment palpable. I see. Well, I'll have Tom cover for you. We'll talk tomorrow. I spent the day in a frenzy, cleaning the house and preparing an elaborate meal. By the time Ethan's parents arrived, I was exhausted but determined to make everything perfect. Sylvia swept in, her critical gaze taking in every detail. Oh, Emily, she sighed, running a finger along the mantel. Dusting is really an everyday task, dear. I bit my tongue, forcing a smile. You're right, Sylvia. I'll try to do better. Dinner was a minefield of passive-aggressive comments and thinly veiled criticisms. As I served dessert, my phone buzzed insistently. Excusing myself, I checked the message. Emily, we need to talk first thing tomorrow. Janet. My heart sank. I knew what that meant. Everything all right? Ethan asked as I returned, his tone more accusatory than concerned. Fine, I mumbled, avoiding his gaze. After his parents left, Ethan cornered me in the kitchen. What was that about? You were distracted all evening. I took a deep breath. It was work. I missed an important presentation today. Ethan's face darkened. Because of dinner? Emily, we talked about this. Your priorities. I know, I snapped, surprising us both. I know what you think my priorities should be. But do you ever consider what I want? What you want, Ethan scoffed. What about what this family needs? What I need from my wife? As we argued, years of pent-up frustration poured out. Every criticism, every impossible expectation, every dream I'd sacrificed, it all came rushing to the surface. I can't do this anymore, Ethan, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm losing myself trying to be the person you want me to be. Ethan's expression hardened. So what are you saying? That our marriage, our life together, isn't enough for you? I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw not the charming man I'd fallen in love with, but a stranger who seemed to take pleasure in my struggle. I'm saying I need to make a change, I replied, my voice stronger now. For my own sanity. Ethan laughed coldly. Good luck with that. You'd be nothing without me, Emily. Remember that. As he stormed out, leaving me alone in the kitchen, I felt something shift inside me. Fear, yes, but also a glimmer of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Tomorrow, I decided, things would be different. I just had to find the courage to make it happen. The day after my argument with Ethan, I found myself at Sylvia's door, a basket of muffins in hand. It was her birthday, and despite everything, I was determined to make an effort. As I rang the doorbell, I steeled myself for the inevitable criticism. Sylvia opened the door, her perfectly coiffed hair and immaculate outfit making me feel frumpy in comparison. Emily, dear, she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. How thoughtful of you to drop by. I followed her into the pristine living room, where she immediately began fussing with the curtains. I hope these muffins aren't store-bought, she said, eyeing the basket suspiciously. No, I baked them myself this morning, I replied, trying to keep the defensiveness out of my voice. Sylvia raised an eyebrow. Well, I suppose that's something. Though really, Emily, a woman in your position should be able to manage something a bit more sophisticated. I bit my tongue, reminding myself why I was here. Sylvia, I was hoping we could talk. About Ethan, about our family. Oh, yes, Sylvia interrupted, her tone sharpening. Ethan called me last night. He was quite upset about your little outburst. My heart sank. Of course he had called his mother. It wasn't an outburst, I said quietly. I was just trying to express how I feel. Sylvia's laugh was like ice. Feelings? My dear, marriage isn't about feelings. It's about duty, about maintaining appearances, something you seem to struggle with. As she continued to lecture me on the proper role of a wife, I felt a familiar sense of inadequacy creeping in. But then I remembered Ethan's cold words from the night before, and something inside me snapped. Enough, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I didn't come here for a lecture, Sylvia. I came to try and understand, to find some common ground, but I see now that's impossible. Sylvia's eyes widened in shock. Well, No, you never have, I continued, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. You've never tried to understand me, to see me as anything more than an accessory for your son. But I'm a person, Sylvia, with dreams, with ambitions, and I'm done apologizing for that. As I spoke, I saw something flicker in Sylvia's eyes. Was it recognition, respect? But it was quickly replaced by her usual cold disdain. If that's how you feel, she said icily, perhaps it's time you reconsidered your place in this family. Her words hit me like a physical blow. My place? I repeated, stunned. Yes, your place, Sylvia continued, her voice dripping with condescension. Ethan comes from a long line of successful, respected individuals. We have standards to maintain. If you can't meet those standards, well... She let the implication hang in the air. As I stared at her, I suddenly saw Ethan's behavior in a new light. The constant criticism, the impossible expectations, it all stemmed from here, from this woman who valued appearance over everything else. You're right, I said, standing up. I should reconsider my place, but not in the way you think. I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. Thank you, Sylvia, I said, meeting her surprised gaze. You've made things very clear. As I drove home, my mind raced. I thought about Ethan, about the life we'd built, about the woman I used to be, and I realized that somewhere along the way, I'd lost myself trying to fit into their world. Pulling into our driveway, I made a decision. It was time to reclaim my life, my identity. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. Ethan wouldn't let me go without a fight, and I had no illusions about the battles ahead. Taking a deep breath, I walked into the house, ready to face whatever came next. Because for the first time in years, I felt like myself again, and that was worth fighting for. The day Jess was born was the happiest of my life. As I held her tiny form in my arms, I felt a surge of love and protectiveness I'd never experienced before. Looking into her innocent eyes, I made a silent promise. I would shield her from the toxicity that had become my daily life. She's perfect, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Ethan stood beside the hospital bed, his expression unreadable. Let's hope she grows up to be a proper lady, he said, his tone oddly detached. I pushed aside the chill his words sent through me, focusing instead on Jess's tiny fingers wrapped around mine. She was my lifeline, my reason to keep going. As the months passed, I threw myself into motherhood with a passion that surprised even me. Every milestone, her first smile, her first steps, her first word, filled me with joy. For a while, it seemed like Jess's presence had softened Ethan. He doted on her, proudly showing off pictures to his colleagues. But as Jess grew older, I noticed a shift in Ethan's behavior. His critical nature, which had been somewhat subdued, began to resurface. The day Jess started kindergarten, I helped her get ready, my heart swelling with pride as she twirled in her new dress. "Mommy, look! I made this for Daddy!" Jess exclaimed, holding up a colorful drawing. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I said, smiling. "He'll love it." But when Ethan came home that evening, his reaction was far from what I'd hoped. "What's this mess?" he frowned, barely glancing at the artwork Jess thrust towards him. "I made it for you, Daddy," Jess said, her voice small. Ethan sighed. "Jess, if you're going to draw, at least try to stay inside the lines. This looks sloppy." I watched as Jess's face crumpled, my own heart breaking. "Ethan," I hissed, "she worked hard on that. She's only 5. He shot me a warning look. "We can't coddle her, Emily. She needs to learn to do things properly." That night, as I tucked Jess into bed, she looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy like my drawing?" I swallowed hard, fighting back my own tears. "Oh, sweetie, Daddy does like it. He just has a funny way of showing it sometimes." But as the weeks went by, Ethan's criticism of Jess became more frequent and harsh. Her artwork was never good enough, her grades could always be better, even her laugh was too loud. One afternoon, I picked Jess up from school to find her unusually quiet. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. She hesitated before speaking. "Mrs. Thompson asked us to draw our families today." "That sounds nice," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Did you have fun?" Jess shook her head, her lower lip trembling. I didn't want to draw Daddy. Is that bad?" Her words hit me like a physical blow. I pulled the car over, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Turning to face Jess, I saw the fear and confusion in her eyes, the same look I'd seen in my own reflection countless times. In that moment, everything crystallized. I thought about the years of emotional manipulation I'd endured, the constant criticism, the slow erosion of my self-worth. And now, watching it happen to my daughter, something inside me snapped. No, sweetheart, I said, my voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. It's not bad at all. In fact, I think it's time we made some changes. As we drove home, my mind raced. I knew what I had to do, but the thought terrified me. Leaving Ethan wouldn't be easy. He wouldn't let us go without a fight, and his family's influence was far-reaching. But looking at Jess in the mirror, seeing the spark that was slowly being extinguished, I knew I had no choice. For her sake, and for my own, I had to find the courage to break free. That night, as Ethan launched into another tirade about Jess's shortcomings, I felt something shift inside me. Enough was enough. Tomorrow, I decided, we would leave. I just prayed I'd have the strength to see it through. The morning I decided to leave Ethan dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside me. I'd spent the night packing essentials for Jess and me, my heart pounding with every creak of the floorboards. As I made breakfast, trying to maintain an air of normalcy, Ethan entered the kitchen, his face thunderous. "Care to explain this?" he snarled, throwing a crumpled paper onto the counter. It was Jess's latest report card, all A's except for one B+. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "It's an excellent report card, Ethan. Jess should be proud." His eyes narrowed dangerously. "Proud? Of mediocrity? That B+ is unacceptable." Something inside me snapped. "No, Ethan. What's unacceptable is how you treat our daughter, how you treat me." He recoiled as if I'd slapped him. "How dare you?" "No," I interrupted, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "I'm done being silent. You've criticized and belittled us for years. I won't let you destroy Jess's self-esteem the way you destroyed mine." Ethan's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful." "Mommy?" Jess's small voice cut through the tension. She stood in the doorway, a hurried, clutching her favorite stuffed animal, eyes wide with fear. In that moment, seeing the terror on my daughter's face, I knew there was no turning back. "Get your backpack, sweetie," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "We're going on a little trip." Ethan lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "You're not going anywhere with my daughter." I wrenched free, adrenaline coursing through me. "Watch me." The next few minutes were a blur of action. I grabbed our packed bags, hustled Jess into the car, and peeled out of the driveway, Ethan's shouts fading behind us. As we drove to my parents' house, Jess's quiet voice broke the silence. "Are we leaving Daddy forever?" My heart clenched. "I don't know, sweetie, but I promise, everything will be okay." My parents welcomed us with open arms, their faces a mix of concern and relief. "We've been waiting for this day," my father said, hugging me tightly. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings and heated phone calls. Ethan, predictably, fought me every step of the way. He froze our joint accounts, threatened to ruin my career, even tried to turn my own parents against me with wild accusations. But I stood firm, drawing strength from Jess's slowly returning smile and the support of my family. Then came the day I'd been dreading. I arrived home from a meeting with my lawyer to find Ethan's car in my parents' driveway. Inside, I found him sitting with Jess, his charm turned up to full wattage. "There's my girls," he said smoothly, as if the past weeks hadn't happened. "I've been thinking, and I realize I may have been a bit harsh. Why don't we go home and work this out?" For a moment, I faltered. The old Emily, desperate for approval, almost gave in, but then I saw Jess, her body tense, eyes darting between us nervously. "No, Ethan," I said firmly. "We're not coming back. In fact," I took a deep breath, "I want a divorce." The charm vanished from his face, replaced by cold fury. "You'll regret this, Emily. I'll make sure you never see Jess again. You're nothing without me, remember that." As he stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. I'd done it. I'd stood up to him. But I knew this was just the beginning of a long, brutal fight. That night, as I tucked Jess into bed, she looked up at me with those innocent eyes. "Mommy, are you scared?" I hesitated, then nodded. "A little, sweetie. But being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared." As I kissed her goodnight, I silently vowed to be the mother she deserved. No matter what battles lay ahead, the road would be tough, but for the first time in years, I felt hope blooming in my chest. We were free, and I was determined to keep it that way. The day Ethan and Sylvia showed up at my workplace, I knew something was terribly wrong. Their smug expressions sent chills down my spine. "Emily, dear," Sylvia purred, loud enough for my coworkers to hear, "we need to discuss your indiscretions." Before I could respond, Ethan thrust a photo into my hands. My heart stopped. It showed me apparently in an intimate embrace with a man I didn't recognize. The image was grainy, but unmistakably meant to be me. "How could you?" Ethan hissed, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Think of poor Jess." I stood there, stunned, as whispers erupted around me. My boss approached, concern etched on her face. "Emily, perhaps you should take the rest of the day off." Humiliated and confused, I fled the office. By the time I reached my parents' house, my phone was buzzing with messages from concerned friends and judgmental acquaintances. The photo had spread like wildfire. "This can't be happening," I sobbed to my father, showing him the picture. His eyes narrowed. "Something's not right here. Let me make a call." Days passed in a blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. I couldn't leave the house without facing accusing stares. Jess came home from school in tears, having overheard cruel gossip about her mother. Then a breakthrough. My father's friend, a retired investigator, uncovered the truth. The photo was expertly manipulated, a composite of my face on someone else's body, and the source none other than Kathy, Ethan's sister. Armed with this information, I confronted Ethan and his family. The showdown took place in my parents' living room, tension thick in the air. "Did you really think you'd get away with this?" I demanded, my voice steadier than I felt. Ethan scoffed. "Prove it." That's when my father's friend stepped forward, presenting irrefutable evidence of the photo manipulation and Kathy's involvement. The color drained from their faces. "How dare you?" I seethed, years of pent-up anger finally breaking free. "You've manipulated and abused me for years, and now this, all because I finally stood up for myself and Jess?" Sylvia attempted damage control. "Now, Emily, let's not be hasty." "No," I cut her off. "I'm done listening to you, all of you. You're toxic, manipulative people, and I won't let you hurt me or my daughter ever again." I turned to Ethan, meeting his gaze head-on. "I want full custody of Jess. You'll pay child support, but you'll stay away from us. If you fight this, I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done." For the first time, I saw fear in Ethan's eyes. He knew he was beaten. In the weeks that followed, the truth came out. Ethan's reputation was in tatters, Sylvia became a social pariah, and Kathy faced legal consequences for her role in the deception. As for me, I held my head high, supported by those who stood by me and strengthened by the ordeal. Months later, as Jess and I settled into our new apartment, I reflected on how far we'd come. My career was back on track, with a promotion on the horizon. Jess was thriving in her new school, her artwork proudly displayed on our fridge without fear of criticism. "Mommy," Jess said one evening as I tucked her in, "are you happy now?" I smiled, truly smiled, for what felt like the first time in years. "Yes, sweetie, we both are." As I closed her door, I caught sight of myself in the hallway mirror. The woman staring back at me was stronger, wiser, and finally free. The road hadn't been easy, and I knew there would be challenges ahead. But I was ready to face them, on my own terms. I had reclaimed my life, my identity, and my future, and in doing so, I'd given Jess the greatest gift of all, a mother who was whole, happy, and fiercely protective of the life we'd built together. The Emily who had once been lost in Ethan's shadow was gone. In her place stood a woman who had faced her demons, fought for her child, and emerged victorious. As I looked out the window at the city lights, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Whatever came next, I knew we could handle it. Together, Jess and I were unstoppable.